Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge of the small research ship Pathfinder. The stars looked peaceful through the main window, but Jake knew better. Out here in the far edge of space, dangerous things happened all the time. His crew was small but good. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez stood at the weapons station, always ready for trouble. Chief Engineer Pete Williams kept their old ship, running when it should have broken down years ago. Dr. Lisa Grant spent most of her time studying alien life, forms they found on different planets. The ship's computer made a beeping sound. A message was coming in from somewhere far away. "Captain, we're getting a distress signal," Amy said. Her fingers moved across the control panel. "It's coming from the Kalari colony world of Theta 7. Jake knew about the Kalari. They were peaceful creatures that looked like giant frogs. They never hurt anyone and just wanted to live quiet lives on their water worlds. "How far away?" Jake asked. 2 days at maximum speed," Pete answered from his station. Jake thought for a moment. The Pathfinder was just a research ship, not built for fighting. But if someone needed help, they had to try. "Set course for Theta 7, Jake ordered. 2 days later, they dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the Kalari world. What they saw made everyone go quiet. The planet was burning. Huge chunks of land were missing, blown away by powerful weapons. The beautiful blue oceans had turned black with smoke and ash. "My God," Dr. Grant whispered. "What could do this?" Amy's face was hard with anger. "Let me guess. The Vorthak." Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Vorthak Empire. For 3,000 years, they had ruled over every star system they could reach. They were 12 feet tall with thick shell-like skin and 4 powerful arms. Their ships were bigger than cities, and their weapons could crack planets in half. But the worst thing about the Vorthak was their minds. They could reach into your thoughts and fill them with terror. Most aliens couldn't even fight back because the fear was too strong. "Take us down to the surface," Jake said. Maybe someone survived. They landed near what used to be the main city. Now it was just broken buildings and empty streets. The air smelled like smoke and death. Jake led a small team outside. They walked through the ruins looking for any sign of life. After an hour of searching, they heard a weak voice calling for help. They found her under a pile of broken stone. She was an old Kalari female, badly hurt and dying. Her big eyes looked up at Jake with pain and hope mixed together. You are human," she said in a voice like a whisper. "Yes," Jake said gently. "We're here to help." The old Kalari tried to smile. "I am Zethara, keeper of the old stories. I never thought I would see your kind before I died." "What happened here?" Dr. Grant asked, kneeling down beside the dying alien. "The Vorthak came 3 days ago," Zethara said. "They wanted us to give them our young ones as slaves. We said no, so they killed everyone." Jake felt anger growing in his chest. The Vorthak had destroyed an entire peaceful world just because the Kalari wouldn't give up their children. Zethara reached out with a weak hand and touched Jake's arm. "The old stories say that someday the sleeping giants would wake up. The mind-blind ones from the Yellow Star would bring down the apex predators." "I don't understand," Jake said. "You will," Zethara whispered. "When you meet them, you will understand why we have waited so long for your kind to find us." The old Kalari closed her eyes and died peacefully. Dr. Grant checked her scanner. "Jake, I'm reading 3 large ships coming this way." "Really large." They ran back to the Pathfinder as fast as they could. Jake barely had time to get to the bridge before 3 massive ships appeared in the sky above them. Each one was bigger than a mountain, dark and threatening. "Vorthak dreadnoughts," Amy said, checking her instruments. "We're completely outgunned." The main screen flickered to life. A huge alien face appeared, looking down at them with 4 glowing red eyes. Its mouth was full of sharp teeth, and its voice sounded like grinding metal. "I am Admiral Crixthul of the Vorthak Death Fleet," the alien said. "You will surrender your ship and prepare to be enslaved." As the alien spoke, Jake felt something strange trying to push into his mind. It was like cold fingers reaching into his thoughts, trying to fill them with fear and panic. He could sense that this was how the Vorthak controlled other species, by making them too scared to fight back. But the fear wouldn't come. The cold feeling in his head was annoying, like a mild headache, but nothing more. Jake looked directly at the huge alien on the screen. "No." Admiral Crixthul's eyes went wide with surprise. "What did you say?" "I said no," Jake repeated calmly. "Get out of our way." On the bridge, Amy was checking her weapons. Pete was working on their engines. Dr. Grant kept studying her data as if giant alien warships weren't surrounding them. None of them seemed afraid at all. The Vorthak Admiral tried again, pushing harder with his mental attack. Jake felt the pressure increase like someone pressing on his temples, but it still didn't scare him. "This is impossible," Admiral Krickstool growled. "No species can resist Vorthak mind control." "What are you?" "We're humans," Jake said simply. "And we don't scare easily." For 3,000 years, Admiral Krickstool had conquered world after world using fear as his weapon. Every alien species they met would break down in terror when faced with Vorthak mental power. But these humans just stood there looking annoyed rather than afraid. "You will learn to fear us," the Admiral said. But his voice didn't sound as confident as before. "Maybe," Jake said. "But not today." The Vorthak ships moved away, but Jake knew they would be back. The Admiral had found something he didn't understand, and that would worry the Vorthak Empire. As the Pathfinder flew away from the dead world, Dr. Grant looked up from her research. "Jake, I've been thinking about what that old Kalari said. About humans being mind-blind. What do you think it means?" Jake asked. "I think," Dr. Grant said slowly, "that we might be the first species the Vorthak have ever met that they can't control, and that scares them more than anything." Jake nodded, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vorthak Empire was learning that their 3,000 years of easy conquest might be coming to an end. The sleeping giants were finally waking up. News of the strange humans spread through the Vorthak Empire like wildfire. Emperor Vashitok himself demanded to know more about these creatures who could resist their mind control. The Emperor was the largest and most powerful Vorthak alive, ruling from his throne world at the center of the galaxy. In his great palace, surrounded by the skulls of conquered enemies, Emperor Vashitok listened to Admiral Krickstool's report with growing anger. "You mean to tell me," the Emperor said, his voice echoing through the chamber, "that a tiny research vessel full of unknown aliens completely ignored our mental attacks?" "Yes, my lord," Admiral Krickstool said, trying not to show his fear. "They seemed immune to our psychic domination." The Emperor's 4 hands clenched into fists. "Impossible. Every species we have ever encountered can be broken with enough mental pressure. These humans must have some kind of technology protecting them." "I don't think so, my lord. They appeared genuinely unaffected, as if our abilities simply don't work on them at all." Emperor Vashitok stood up from his massive throne. At 15 feet tall, he towered over even other Vorthak. "Then we will test them properly, find their worlds, learn their weaknesses, and prepare to add them to our empire." Meanwhile, far away on the human defense station called Avalon, Commander Steve Kelly was having a very different kind of day. Steve was a former soldier who now ran the small military base that protected the outer human colonies. He was drinking his morning coffee when his communications officer rushed in. "Commander, we're receiving a message from someone calling himself Emperor Vashitok," said Corporal Maria Santos, looking confused. "He's demanding that all humans surrender immediately and offer tribute to something called the Vorthak Empire." Steve nearly choked on his coffee. "He's demanding what now?" Maria handed him a datapad with the message. Steve read it carefully. "The alien emperor wanted humans to give up their weapons, their ships, and half of all their food production. In return, the Vorthak would allow humans to live as slaves instead of killing them all." Steve looked at Maria with a grin. "Send a reply." "What should I tell him, sir?" Steve thought for a moment, then started listing off every curse word he could remember from his years in the military. He threw in some creative insults in Spanish that Maria had taught him, added a few choice phrases in French from Dr. Grant's language files, and finished with some words in German that Pete Williams had used when the Pathfinder's engines broke down. "Send all of that," Steve said, "and make sure to include the translation file so they know exactly what I'm saying." 20 minutes later, Corporal Santos ran back into Steve's office, laughing so hard she could barely speak. "Commander, their computer systems crashed trying to translate your message. They sent back a single-word response. What did they say? Help." Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Carter was studying everything they could learn about the Vorthak Empire. As humanity's top expert on alien psychology, she worked with General Rick Davis to understand what they were dealing with. "It's fascinating," Helen told the general as they looked over historical records. "Every single species the Vorthak conquered had some level of natural psychic ability. The more sensitive they were to mental influence, the faster they surrendered." General Davis frowned. "So why are we different?" Because humans evolved on a world with no psychic predators, Helen explained. Most alien species developed mental sensitivity as a survival trait. They needed to sense psychic threats to stay alive. We never faced that kind of danger, so we never developed those abilities. You're saying we're immune because we're basically deaf to psychic attacks? Exactly. It's like they're trying to communicate in a language we can't hear. While the scientists studied, Captain Jake Morrison and his crew continued their reconnaissance missions. They had been watching Vorthak operations for weeks, learning how the aliens fought and conquered other worlds. What they discovered was shocking. Their entire military strategy is based on psychological warfare. Dr. Grant reported during a briefing with Earth Command. They use their psychic abilities to terrify enemy forces before the actual fighting even starts. By the time Vorthak troops land on a planet, the defenders are usually too scared to resist. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez nodded agreement. We watched them take over a mining world last week. The local population surrendered the moment the Vorthak fleet appeared. No shots were fired. Chief Engineer Pete Williams added his own observations. Their technology isn't as advanced as we thought either. A lot of their systems seem to rely on psychic enhancement to function properly. Without that mental boost, their equipment might not be much better than ours. Captain Morrison leaned back in his chair. So you're telling me that the most feared empire in the galaxy is basically built on bluffing? In simple terms, yes, Dr. Grant said. They've gotten so used to winning through intimidation that they may not know how to fight an enemy that isn't afraid of them. The conversation was interrupted when technical. Sergeant Danny Brooks burst into the room. Danny spent most of his time monitoring alien communications from a hidden listening post. Captain, you need to hear this, Danny said, out of breath from running. I intercepted Vorthak military frequencies. They're planning an attack. Where? Morrison asked. New Montana colony. They want to test human defenses by hitting what they think is an easy target. The attack comes in 3 days. General Davis immediately contacted the colony to offer evacuation ships. But the response surprised everyone. Sheriff Roy Campbell, the colony's main law enforcement officer, spoke for the 8,000 colonists. Thank you kindly for the offer, General, but we're not running. These aliens want to see what humans are made of? Well, they're about to find out. Mayor Susan Price added her own message. We've got mining equipment, farming vehicles, and enough stubborn pride to choke a horse. If these Vorthak things think they can scare us off our land, they've got another think coming. Dr. Helen Carter watched the colonists prepare for battle and shook her head in amazement. Most species would evacuate when faced with impossible odds. Humans dig in and get ready to fight. Meanwhile, Dr. Grant had been studying the old Kalari records from the destroyed colony. What she found made her call an emergency meeting with Earth Command. There's something else, she announced to the assembled military leaders. The Kalari had ancient prophecies about a species from the third planet of a yellow star. According to their texts, these mind-blind warriors would one day end the reign of the galaxy's apex predators. General Davis raised an eyebrow. You're saying they knew we were coming? I'm saying that civilizations across the galaxy have been waiting for someone like us for thousands of years. The Vorthak Empire has lasted so long because nobody could resist their mental domination. But the old stories all mentioned beings who couldn't be controlled by thought alone. Captain Morrison studied the ancient text translations. So we're not just random humans who happen to be psychically immune. We're the answer to a galactic problem that's been building for millennia. It would seem so, Dr. Grant agreed. And if these prophecies are accurate, the Vorthak Empire is about to face something they've never encountered before. An enemy that fights back. The news from New Montana colony continued to surprise everyone. Instead of panicking, the colonists seemed excited about the coming battle. 16-year-old Tony Martinez volunteered to help set up defensive positions. 80-year-old Grace Johnson, a retired Navy engineer, started building explosive devices in her garage. Farmer Bill Carter began converting his combine harvester into an armored vehicle. Schoolteacher Jennifer Lopez organized sniper teams. Mechanic Sam Turner turned his repair shop into a fortress. These people are insane, Admiral Crixthal said as he watched the human preparations from orbit. They know we're coming to destroy them and they're having a party. His second-in-command, General Thokvar, was equally confused. In 3,000 years of conquest, I have never seen a species react this way to impending destruction. They should be fleeing in terror. Perhaps their immunity to our mental abilities has made them mentally damaged, Admiral Crixthal suggested. They may not understand the danger they're in. Or General Thakvar said quietly. They understand perfectly and simply don't care. Back on Earth, the final preparations were being made. Humanity had spent 2 centuries quietly spreading across the galaxy, staying away from major trade routes and avoiding contact with the big galactic powers. Now they were about to be thrust into a war they never asked for. But as Dr. Helen Carter watched the reports coming in from colonies across human space, she realized something important. Every human settlement was making the same choice as New Montana. Nobody was running. Everyone was getting ready to fight. General, she told Rick Davis, I think we're about to teach the galaxy something new about human nature. What's that? That there's a big difference between not being able to fight back and choosing not to fight back. The Vorthak have spent 3,000 years conquering species that couldn't resist them. They've never faced a species that simply refused to be conquered. As Admiral Crixthal prepared his fleet for what he expected to be an easy demonstration of Vorthak power, he had no idea that he was about to become part of galactic history. The age of Vorthak domination was about to end. And the guy... Admiral Crixthal looked down at the small human colony with confidence. New Montana was just a farming world with 8,000 people. His fleet of 20 massive dreadnoughts could destroy planets. This would be easy. Begin the fear protocol, he ordered his crew. The Vorthak had perfected psychological warfare over 3,000 years. First, they would fill the minds of their enemies with terrifying images. Pictures of previous conquests, scenes of destruction and death, visions of what would happen to anyone who resisted the Vorthak Empire. On the surface of New Montana, Sheriff Roy Campbell felt the strange pressure in his head as the alien attack began. Images of burning cities and screaming aliens tried to push into his thoughts. It felt like someone was trying to change the channel in his brain. Roy picked up his radio and spoke to the entire colony. Attention, everyone. The aliens are trying some kind of mind trick on us. Feels like a mild headache to me. How's everyone else doing? The responses came back immediately from all across the colony. This is Grace Johnson. Whatever they're doing, it's not working. My arthritis hurts worse than this. Tony Martinez here. I've had worse headaches from studying for math tests. Bill Carter reporting in. If this is their best shot at scaring us, they're going to be disappointed. Admiral Crixthal couldn't believe what he was hearing on the intercepted radio transmissions. The humans were talking about his most powerful psychological weapon like it was a minor annoyance. Increase power to maximum, he ordered. The psychic attack intensified. Now the Vorthak were using enough mental force to drive entire planetary populations insane with terror. The images became more vivid, more horrifying, more overwhelming. Sheriff Campbell felt the pressure increase and frowned. Okay, folks, they're trying harder now. Anyone having trouble? Mayor Susan Price responded from the town hall. Roy, this is starting to get annoying. It's like having someone shout in your ear while you're trying to work. Schoolteacher Jennifer Lopez called in from her sniper position. Can we make them stop? I'm trying to set up my rifle and this mental noise is distracting. What the humans didn't realize was that they were doing something impossible. The Vorthak fear protocol had never failed in 3,000 years of conquest. Species that tried to resist usually went insane from the psychic pressure. But humans had evolved differently. Their minds had developed strong natural defenses against mental intrusion, because they'd never needed psychic abilities to survive. The Vorthak attacks felt annoying rather than terrifying. Sir, General Thakvar said to Admiral Crixthal, the fear protocol has completely failed. The humans show no signs of psychological breakdown. Admiral Crixthal was starting to panic. This had never happened before. Then we do this the old-fashioned way. Send down the landing forces. We'll conquer them with physical force. The Vorthak troop transports descended toward New Montana like black storms. Each ship carried 500 elite warriors, soldiers who had conquered countless worlds. They were trained, experienced, and equipped with the best weapons in the galaxy. What they found when they landed confused them completely. The humans weren't cowering in fear. They weren't trying to surrender. They were excited, actually excited about the coming battle. Farmer Bill Carter had turned his combine harvester into an armored fighting vehicle, complete with improvised weapons and metal plating. He drove straight toward the landing Vorthak troops, whooping with joy like he was at a county fair. Come on, you ugly sons of guns, Bill shouted over his radio. Let's see what you got. The Vorthak warriors had never faced enemies who seemed happy to fight them. In their experience, conquered populations were either terrified into submission or broken by despair. These humans acted like the battle was entertainment. Grace Johnson had set up her homemade explosives along the main road into town. When the first group of Vorthak soldiers marched past, she triggered the devices with a gleeful cackle. "Take that, you overgrown bugs," the 80-year-old woman shouted. Jennifer Lopez had positioned her students-turned-snipers on rooftops throughout the colony. They picked off Vorthak officers with hunting rifles, treating the battle like the shooting competitions they held every summer. "Nice shot, Maria," Jennifer called to one of her former students. "Remember to adjust for wind speed." Mechanic Sam Turner had fortified his repair shop with metal plates and machine guns. When Vorthak warriors tried to break in, they found themselves facing a man who was genuinely enjoying the challenge of outfighting aliens. "Come on in, boys," Sam yelled. "I've got plenty of hospitality to go around." The strangest thing was how the humans fought together. Most conquered species broke down into chaos when faced with Vorthak invasion. But the New Montana colonists coordinated their defense like they'd been planning it their whole lives. Tony Martinez, the 16-year-old volunteer, ran messages between defensive positions while dodging alien weapons fire. Instead of being scared, he seemed thrilled by the adventure. "Mrs. Lopez needs more ammunition at the school," he reported to Sheriff Campbell. "And Mr. Carter says his harvester is working great, but he wants to know if anyone has more explosive rounds." What the Vorthak didn't understand was that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history as persistence hunters. They were designed by nature to keep fighting even when the odds were against them. Injury and exhaustion just made them more determined. Every time a colonist was hurt or killed, the others didn't surrender. They got angrier. They fought harder. They became more creative with their tactics. When the Vorthak destroyed the town's power plant, the humans switched to backup generators and kept fighting by lamplight. When alien aircraft tried to bomb their positions, they shot back with hunting rifles and farming equipment. General Thakvar watched the battle from his command ship in growing amazement. "Sir, our ground forces are taking heavy casualties. The humans are not fighting like any species we've encountered before." "Explain," Admiral Crixthal demanded. "They seem to become more dangerous as the battle continues, not less. Normally, enemy resistance weakens as we inflict casualties, but these humans appear to be energized by combat." Admiral Crixthal studied the tactical displays. His invasion force was being stopped by farmers with improvised weapons. Elite Vorthak warriors trained from birth to conquer worlds were struggling against humans who had learned to fight just 3 days ago. After 6 hours of ground combat, something unprecedented happened. General Thakvar's forces began requesting permission to retreat. "Sir, we've lost over 2,000 warriors," Thakvar reported. "The humans have fortified every building, every street, every farm. They're fighting with a level of determination we've never encountered." Admiral Crixthal couldn't process what he was hearing. The Vorthak Empire had never retreated from a ground battle. Ever. In 3,000 years of conquest, they had never met a species that refused to break under pressure. "Fall back to the ships," he finally ordered. "We'll destroy them from orbit." But even as the surviving Vorthak troops evacuated, the humans kept fighting. They shot at the departing transports with whatever weapons they had left. Some colonists were still trying to attack the retreating aliens with farming tools. Sheriff Campbell's voice came over the radio one last time as the Vorthak fleet prepared to leave. "That's right. You cowards, run away, and don't come back unless you want another beating." Admiral Crixthal stared at the tactical readout in disbelief. He had started the battle with 20 dreadnoughts and 10,000 elite warriors. Now he had 12 ships and less than 8,000 troops. A single human farming colony had inflicted casualties the Vorthak hadn't experienced in centuries. But the worst part wasn't the losses. It was the knowledge that word of this battle would spread throughout the galaxy. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone had successfully resisted the Vorthak Empire. And if these 8,000 farmers could do it, what would happen when the Vorthak faced the entire human species? News of New Montana's victory traveled faster than light across the galaxy. For 3,000 years, no one had successfully fought the Vorthak Empire. Now recordings of human farmers defeating elite alien warriors were being shared on every communication network. The effect was immediate and dramatic. On the water world of Nephtai, the aquatic aliens who had been enslaved for 2,000 years suddenly remembered what freedom felt like. Elder Valandra called together the resistance leaders she thought were long dead. "The prophecy is fulfilled," she announced to the gathered crowd. "The mind-blind ones have awakened. The time has come to reclaim our world." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The crystalline Zethani began sabotaging Vorthak mining operations on their homeworld. The insectoid Kickstar started attacking supply convoys. Even species that had been conquered so long they'd forgotten their original names began to resist. All of them had one thing in common. They wanted to fight. Alongside the humans who had shown them that the Vorthak could be beaten, Admiral Julie, west of the human battleship Defiance, found herself at the center of this galactic rebellion. Her ship had been patrolling the outer colonies when dozens of alien vessels arrived asking for help. "Admiral West," said Captain Zarthek of the Kellery Resistance Fleet, "we request permission to coordinate our forces with yours. Our people have been waiting centuries for this moment." Julie looked at her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Paul Anderson, who was studying the alien ships on their scanners. "What do you think, Paul?" "Their ships are old but well-maintained," Paul reported. "The crews seem experienced, probably veterans of failed rebellions. They know how to fight. They just never had a chance to win before." "The problem," Julie said, "is that they're still vulnerable to Vorthak mind control. How do we protect them during battle?" Dr. Lisa Grant, who had been reassigned to Admiral West's fleet, had been working on exactly that problem. "I think I have a solution. Our preliminary tests show that humans can act as psychic anchors for other species. If we integrate human crew members into alien ships, their natural immunity might extend protection to their teammates." The first test came sooner than expected. A Vorthak patrol fleet attacked the Rebel Alliance near the abandoned mining world of Kepler 438b. Admiral West led a mixed force of human and alien vessels into battle. What happened next shocked both sides. The Allied fleet included Kalari waterships, Zethani crystal fighters, Nephtai biovessels, and human military craft. When the Vorthak tried their standard psychological attack, something amazing occurred. The alien crews, who should have been paralyzed by fear, remained calm and focused. Having humans aboard their ships somehow protected them from mental domination. "This is impossible," muttered Vorthak Admiral Grixnall as he watched his fear protocol fail completely. "How are they resisting our psychic attacks?" Lieutenant Commander Paul Anderson had the answer. He'd been studying Vorthak battle tactics and discovered their weakness. "Admiral, their entire military doctrine is based on breaking enemy morale before the shooting starts. Without psychological dominance, they don't know how to fight a conventional battle." The space battle that followed proved Paul's theory correct. When the Vorthak couldn't terrify their enemies into submission, their tactical skills fell apart. Ships that should have been coordinating their attacks began operating independently. Battle formations dissolved into chaos. Admiral West pressed her advantage. All ships focus fire on their command vessel. Without their fear weapons, they're just another enemy fleet. The victory was complete. For the first time in galactic history, a mixed species fleet had defeated the Vorthak in open combat. The psychological effect rippled across known space. But Emperor Vashtok was not finished. Driven to desperation by the spreading rebellions, he authorized the use of weapons that the Vorthak had never needed before: planet crackers. These massive devices could shatter entire worlds. If the Emperor couldn't dominate the galaxy through fear, he would destroy any planet that dared to resist. The first target was Haven, a major human agricultural world with 2 million colonists. Governor Matt Thompson received the evacuation order from Earth Command but refused to leave. "This is our home," he announced in a colony-wide broadcast. "Our families are buried in this soil. Our children were born under these stars. If these aliens think they can scare us into running, they don't understand what it means to be human." The colonists of Haven made the same choice as New Montana. They would fight rather than flee. Captain Jake Morrison, now commanding a small fleet of human and allied warships, led a desperate mission to stop the planet cracker. Intelligence reports suggested that the massive weapon was heading for Haven, with an escort of 50 Vorthak dreadnoughts. "Jake," Dr. Grant said during the mission briefing, "I've been analyzing Vorthak technology. I think their equipment relies heavily on psychic interfaces. If we can disrupt the mental connection between their operators and their machines, we might be able to shut down the planet cracker." Chief Engineer Pete Williams nodded agreement. "I've noticed the same thing. Their computers seem to respond to thought commands rather than physical controls. It's actually a weakness, why? Without psychic input, their systems become unstable." The battle above Haven became the largest space engagement in galactic history. Over 300 ships from dozens of species fought together against the Vorthak fleet. At the center of it all was the planet Cracker itself, a weapon the size of a small moon, capable of destroying an entire world. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez led a squadron of human fighters through the enemy formation, targeting the psychic relay nodes that connected Vorthak systems. Jake, I'm seeing massive power fluctuations in their ships. Whatever they're using to link their technology together is breaking down. Pete Williams confirmed the readings from his engineering station. The electromagnetic pulse weapons we designed for electronic warfare are disrupting their psychic networks too. It's like their thoughts and their technology use the same frequencies. As the battle continued, something remarkable became clear. Vorthak technology wasn't actually superior to human engineering. It only appeared advanced because they used mental enhancement to boost their system's performance. When human EMP weapons severed the psychic connections, Vorthak dreadnoughts simply fell apart. Weapons that could crack planets became useless chunks of metal floating in space. Amy's fighter squadron reached the planet Cracker's central control chamber. When they severed the psychic link to the massive weapon's brain, the device shut down completely. Jake, Amy reported with amazement. This thing is basically a giant computer controlled by alien thoughts. Without the mental interface, it's just an expensive piece of space junk. The Vorthak fleet retreated in disorder, leaving behind their ultimate weapon disabled and drifting. The planet Haven was saved, and the galaxy learned something important about the supposedly invincible Vorthak Empire. Their advanced technology was built on a foundation of psychic dependence. Remove that foundation, and the entire structure collapsed. Emperor Vashitok received the news of the defeat in his throne room with growing rage. For 3,000 years, the Vorthak had been the apex predators of the galaxy. Now a species of psychically deaf aliens was dismantling his empire piece by piece. "My lord," Admiral Crixthal said carefully, "perhaps we should consider negotiating with the humans. They seem willing to accept surrender from our forces." Emperor Vashtok's forearms clenched into fists. "Never. If we cannot dominate these humans through fear or superior technology, then we will destroy their homeworld itself. Gather every ship in the Empire. We assault Earth directly. Sir, that would mean abandoning our territorial defenses. The rebellions would spread to every system we control. Then let them rebel," the Emperor growled. "Without their human allies to protect them from our psychic attacks, they will fall back into line eventually. But first we eliminate the source of this resistance once and for all." The largest fleet in galactic history began assembling at the edge of Vorthak space. Over 10,000 warships prepared for the final assault on humanity's birthworld. But on Earth, Admiral Jack Sullivan was preparing his own surprise. The human defense fleet had learned much from their battles with the Vorthak. Now they were ready to put that knowledge to the ultimate test. The age of Vorthak dominance was ending, and the final battle was about to begin. Emperor Vashitok stood on the bridge of his flagship Dominion, watching the largest invasion fleet in galactic history prepare for departure. Over 10,000 Vorthak warships filled the space around his fortress ship, which was itself the size of a small moon. "My lord," Admiral Crixthal reported, "all fleets are ready for the assault on Earth. We have committed every available vessel to this operation." The Emperor nodded with satisfaction. "Good. For 3,000 years we have ruled this galaxy through fear and superior power. These humans have shown that they cannot be frightened, and our technology has proven less effective than expected. So we will simply overwhelm them with numbers." What Emperor Vashtok didn't know was that his decision to gather every Vorthak ship for the Earth assault had left the rest of the galaxy defenseless. Rebellions were erupting on hundreds of worlds as enslaved species realized their oppressors were gone. On Earth, Admiral Jack Sullivan watched the approaching enemy fleet through the main screen of his flagship Independence. The tactical display showed an impossible situation. 10,000 enemy vessels against fewer than 800 human and allied defenders. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "long-range sensors confirm Emperor Vashitok himself is leading the attack. The flagship Dominion is at the center of their formation." Jack studied the enemy positions with the calm expression that had made him famous throughout the human fleet. "Any word from Dr. Carter's research team?" "Yes, sir. She says she's found the key to ending this war." Dr. Helen Carter had spent months studying captured Vorthak technology and prisoners. What she discovered changed everything humanity thought they knew about their enemies. Admiral Sullivan, Helen explained during the final strategy meeting, the Vorthak suffer from a form of collective psychological dependence. They've relied on their psychic network for so long that individual Vorthak can't function independently. Meaning what exactly? Jack asked. Meaning their entire species is connected through a shared mental network. It's how they coordinate their fleets, operate their technology, even make basic decisions. If we can disrupt that network, the entire invasion force becomes helpless. Commander Steve Kelly, now commanding the carrier Washington, leaned forward with interest. How do we target something like that? We don't target the network, Helen said with a grim smile. We target the source. Emperor Vashtok himself is the central node that connects all Vorthak minds. If we can capture or eliminate him, the entire species loses their ability to function as a coordinated force. The plan that emerged was audacious in its simplicity. Rather than fight the massive invasion fleet ship by ship, the human alliance would send a strike force directly at the Emperor's flagship. Once Vashtok was removed from the psychic network, his own fleet would become 10,000 confused, isolated vessels. But first, they had to survive the initial assault. The Battle of Earth began when the Vorthak fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Emperor Vashtok expected to find a terrified human population begging for mercy. Instead, he found Admiral Sullivan's fleet waiting in battle formation. Humans of Earth, the Emperor broadcast on all frequencies. You have defied the Vorthak Empire for the last time. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist and we will make your world burn for 1,000 years. Admiral Sullivan's response became legendary throughout the galaxy. Emperor Vashtok, this is Admiral Jack Sullivan of the Earth Defense Force. You picked the wrong species to threaten. Bring it on. The space battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Vorthak dreadnoughts exchanged fire with human battleships while allied vessels from dozens of species fought alongside their psychic anchor crews. But the real battle was taking place on a different level. As the fleets engaged each other, Commander Steve Kelly led a strike force of fast attack ships toward the massive flagship Dominion. Their mission was to board the enemy command vessel and capture Emperor Vashtok alive. Remember, Dr. Carter had told them before launch, we need him alive. If he dies, the psychic backlash might kill every Vorthak in the fleet. Our goal is to capture him and disrupt the network, not commit genocide. The boarding action was the most dangerous mission in human military history. Steve Kelly's Marines had to fight their way through a fortress ship filled with elite Vorthak guards, all while the largest space battle in galactic history raged around them. Marine Sergeant Lisa Park led the assault on the Emperor's throne room, armed with weapons specifically designed to disrupt Vorthak psychic abilities. Keep those neural disruptors active, she ordered her squad. We can't let them get into our heads. The final confrontation took place in Emperor Vashtok's vast chamber, surrounded by the skulls of conquered species. The Emperor himself stood 15 feet tall, armed with weapons that had conquered 1,000 worlds. But when he tried to overwhelm the human Marines with psychic terror, nothing happened. The neural disruptors protected them completely from his mental attacks. This is impossible, Vashtok roared. I am the master of 1,000 species. I am the apex predator of the galaxy. Sergeant Park looked up at the towering alien emperor and shrugged. Maybe you were, but now you're under arrest. The moment Emperor Vashtok fell unconscious from the neural disruptors, something extraordinary happened throughout the Vorthak fleet. Every ship suddenly stopped moving. Every weapon went silent. Thousands of Vorthak warriors stood motionless, staring into space with confused expressions. Admiral, reported the tactical officer aboard the Independence, the entire enemy fleet has gone dead in space. They're not responding to our communications or taking any aggressive action. Admiral Sullivan studied the tactical display in amazement. 10,000 enemy warships floated helplessly around Earth, their crews apparently unable to function without their Emperor's mental guidance. Dr. Carter's voice came over the communication system from the captured flagship. Admiral, this is incredible. The Vorthak are like individual cells in a larger organism. Without Emperor Vashtok's psychic coordination, they literally don't know how to act independently. What's their condition? Jack asked, confused but not hostile. They're basically waiting for someone to tell them what to do. It's like they've forgotten how to make decisions for themselves. The aftermath of the Battle of Earth marked the end of the Vorthak Empire and the beginning of a new galactic age. The Vorthak species was relocated to a single star system, their psychic abilities dampened by human-designed neural inhibitors that allowed them to function as individuals for the first time in millennia. Emperor Vashitok, stripped of his psychic powers, spent his remaining years on a farm learning to grow vegetables. Former Vorthak warriors became artists, builders, and teachers. Without their collective hive mind, they discovered personalities and interests they never knew they had. The galaxy itself began healing from 3,000 years of oppression. Species that had been enslaved for generations rebuilt their civilizations with human assistance. Trade routes reopened. Art and culture flourished again. Admiral Sullivan found himself appointed as the first director of the Galactic Council, a democratic organization that replaced the Vorthak Empire. His first official act was to establish the Never Again protocols, safeguards designed to prevent any single species from dominating the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison, whose encounter with the dying Kalari Elder had started the whole chain of events, was given command of the exploration ship New Horizons. His mission was to search for other species that might need help rebuilding after Vorthak oppression. On his first mission, Jake discovered a world where the local population had built monuments to the sleeping giants who woke up to save the galaxy. Children played games about brave humans fighting monster aliens. Poets wrote songs about the day the apex predators learned they weren't at the top of the food chain after all. Dr. Helen Carter published her definitive study on the psychology of galactic dominance. Her most famous conclusion became required reading in schools across human space. The most dangerous predator in any ecosystem isn't the strongest or the smartest. It's the one that refuses to accept its place in the food chain. Years later, when young humans asked their elders about the war that freed the galaxy, they were told a simple truth that became humanity's unofficial motto. We weren't the biggest, strongest, or smartest species in the galaxy. We were just too stubborn to know when we were supposed to give up. And sometimes, late at night in space stations and colonies across the galaxy, members of various species would gather to tell stories about the day the apex predators met a species that had spent millions of years learning the most important lesson in the universe. There's always something tougher than the toughest thing around. You just have to wait for it to wake up.